Welcome to the Life After Sugar podcast. The podcast that's not just about sugar, but about your relationship with it and also with food and especially with yourself. So if you want to discover your life after sugar and hear inspiring stories from all kinds of people who also cut out sugar in their way, at their pace, for their own reasons, this is the podcast for you. Because when you take away the sugar, you can finally discover the real sweetness in your life. I'm your host, Netta Gorman. So one of the most common questions that I get from people is, what the heck do you eat? And if you don't eat sugar or foods with flour or processed foods, then what's left? And that was the exact same question that I had when I first went to the grocery store with my little shopping list of unprocessed foods. And I thought to myself, what am I going to have for dinner? Ice cubes? That seems to be all that's left if you take away everything that has sugar and flour in it, because admit it, you go to the grocery store, how many products on the shelves contain sugar and or flour? It seems like everything contains sugar. And I just couldn't imagine making a meal, let alone several meals, let alone years of meals that are different and varied and interesting and delicious without including sugar and flour in them. So let me tell you a little story of my first trip to the grocery store with my shopping list. So in I go with my empty shopping cart, and I kind of walk around aimlessly at first, and I go to the central aisles, and I pick up a loaf of bread, right? Regular bread, brown bread, because, it's healthy, right? And I look at the label, and you have to know this. I speak several languages. I teach languages, and I also have a university education in linguistics, but I cannot make sense of a simple nutritional label. I don't know about you, but I think that they make them purposely confusing for us, for consumers like us. So I pick up this loaf of bread and I look at the label and I look at the ingredients and I see a whole bunch of ingredients. The first one, of course, is flour. Now, I know that bread is made from flour, but I didn't realize that flour is a form of sugar. And my list said no sugar or flour. So even though it was brown bread, even though it had bran in it, and I'd been suffering from constipation for so many years, I'd always thought bran is the way to go. Well, even though it had bran in it, it also had flour. So I put it back on the shelf. No flour for me. And I continue on in the grocery store, walking around the aisles. I pick up a box of cereal, high brand cereal. I won't mention the brand, but high brand cereal that I'd always bought because it said it was a high source of fiber. And here I was suffering from constipation for the last 15 years, and it was getting worse. And I never actually thought that even though I was eating more of this high brand cereal, my constipation was actually getting worse, not better. But that's a story for another day. So I look at the label of this high brand cereal, and again, I see that it's made out of flour. And not only that, but the third ingredient is sugar. What's sugar doing in there? So I put the box back because I've been told on my list, no flour, no sugar. And I carry on like this, round the supermarket, especially in the central aisles, which is pretty much where I used to hang out. And every box and every packet had either some kind of flour or some kind of added sugar in it. So I decide to go around the outskirts of the grocery store. Now, my shopping cart was still empty. I still hadn't put anything in it because everything I'd picked up had either flour or sugar in it or some kind of sweetened additive. So I go around the outskirts of the grocery store, and the first thing I see is the produce section, fruits, vegetables, and I think, oh, wait, these don't have added flour for sure, and they certainly don't have added sugar. So how many fruits and vegetables are in the produce section? How many different sorts? Dozens of different sorts. So I start putting fruits and vegetables into my cart, although my list told me to keep to low sugar fruits. Now, I didn't even know that fruits were kind of on a sliding scale of sugar content, but I did learn that berries, strawberries, raspberries, blueberries, blackberries were part of a group of fruit that have the least sugar. So that's what I chose, as well as lemons and limes. So I chose those as well. And then all veggies that grow above the ground are lower in natural sugars. Now, I'm not scared of natural sugars, and nor should you be, I think. But all the same, any root vegetables tend to be more starchy. So like carrots and potatoes, for example, which I don't know about you, but when I was growing up in England, that was like the staple at our house, carrots and potatoes. So it was a little bit weird to leave them out of my shopping cart. But I thought, listen, this is just for 2 weeks as an experiment to reduce forms of sugar. So I'm not going to die if I don't eat carrots and potatoes for 2 weeks. And in any case, I have lots of other vegetables, the ones that grow above the ground, right? So I walk into another part of the grocery store, and this time it's the dairy section. Now, I don't have a problem with dairy. I don't have any kind of intolerance to lactose. So here I was looking at all the different types of yogurt. And I really liked yogurt, either vanilla yogurt or cappuccino yogurt or lemon yogurt. And every time I picked up a yogurt with these types of flavorings, without exception, they all had sugar in the list of ingredients. So I put them back. And the only yogurt that I found without added sugar was plain yogurt. So I also didn't want any kind of other weird additives in there. So I bought full fat, plain yogurt with no additives. And the only natural sugars that are in yogurt is the lactose. So that was fine. And into my shopping cart it went. And I was kind of feeling a little bit confused by now, because I didn't believe that there was any kind of food that I could buy that didn't contain added sugars or flour. But here I was, my cart was already half full with vegetables and certain types of fruit and plain yogurt. And I also was looking at the different types of cheeses. And did you know that cheese also doesn't contain a lot of lactose? The longer it ferments to become cheese, the less lactose there is. I didn't know this at the time. I learned it since then. But I chose a few types of cheeses that I really like good quality cheeses. And so that went into my shopping cart. And then eggs. They also don't contain any added sugars or flour. And of course, meat and fish. We're not vegetarians. So I chose meat and fish, either fresh or frozen. That went into my cart, and I thought, I think I've got some basic ingredients for dinner, along with a little bit of cream, along with some butter, and that started to freak me out because I was scared of all this saturated fat in meat and cream and butter, and I don't want to get fat from eating fat. But I must say, I had read a little bit, and a lot more since then, about what fat actually does in your body. And from what I'd read, I found out that what actually makes you put on weight is really not fat at all. It's sugar. And I wanted to experiment this for myself. So I thought, listen, again, it's just for 2 weeks. Eat the cream, eat the butter, eat the meat, and see what happens. If at the end of 2 weeks, you end up putting on weight, then we'll reevaluate the whole experience. But I won't lie, I was pretty nervous about it all because all my life I'd been told that fat makes you fat and to keep away from saturated fats especially, and to go with low-fat products. And here I was with full-fat yogurt and cream and butter and meat. And that's what I ended up cooking after my first trip to the grocery store. So I'll let you know what kinds of recipes I made with these basic ingredients. But just so you know, my shopping cart wasn't as empty as I was fearing it would be. And in the end, I ended up eating pretty well for those 2 weeks. So for those of you who are wondering, okay, what do I replace sugar with? I kind of have two answers. First, real food, like whole, real foods. Fruits, vegetables, meat, fish, or plant-based proteins. Fermented dairy like yogurt and cheese. Eggs, beans, pulses. Any of those foods, real foods, can replace the fake foods that we often find added sugars in. And what can you eat that doesn't have added sugars or flours in it? Well, these are the foods. Because sugar is in itself a refined product, and it's only found in refined and processed products. It's not found, the sugar that we know, the white sugar, is not found in whole foods. Only natural sources of sugars are in whole foods, not added sugars. And once we understand that, then that opens up a whole new world. So thank you for listening. Please remember to subscribe to the Life After Sugar podcast and share it with friends and on social media. Keep in touch and see you soon for another episode.